Hi, and welcome to the 16th Masterclass with MET Orchestra Musicians here at Lessonface, today featuring Stephen White, Rob Knopper, and Gregory Zuper. I'm Katie Falk-Flores here with Lessonface, where we connect students with great teachers for live lessons and classes. In this Masterclass today, we will have 3 student performances and coaching sessions, followed by a brief Q&A at the end. So please enter any questions in the chat box if you have them, and we'll address them after the performances. With that being said, let's begin. And now Stephen White of the MET Orchestra will coach Kenneth Cubillas, a student at Montclair State University, who will play excerpts from Scheherazade and Capriccio Espagnol by Rimsky-Korsakov and Lieutenant Kije by Prokofiev and Symphony No. 10 by Shostakovich.
Hey, Kenneth.
Hey, Steve.
Sounds great. Great job.
Thank you.
I know it's always a little it must feel weird just playing out to the video and nobody's screen's on, but I'm sure everyone was clapping for you at the end. So really nice. So what are you kind of working on these for right now? Is it kind of working on rep? Do you have any like audition kind of things for summer, or where are you at with this?
Yeah, my original plan was to get me ready for the summer festivals,
Mm-hmm.
but with the whole thing going with COVID, everyone is already have the people who auditioned last year playing for this year, so
Right.
I'm gonna have to wait for another year. So
Yeah.
either way, I want to keep working on this stuff in the rep to get me ready for next year.
Yeah, and that's good. It's almost like you have an opportunity now to have an extra year to make everything even like a year better than it would be right now. So I think that's great. Overall, I really like your approach to all these, and I'm really glad that we got to have you play them all at once, because I kind of like to see kind of how they connect to each other, and what certain things can kind of maybe come up in multiple excerpts. So let's just jump into let's start back at Scheherazade.
Yeah.
So I think my general impression with a lot of these, especially the ones you pick, so in Scheherazade and especially in the Shostakovich, is just kind of getting more fire into your playing, because I think ultimately when we hear excerpts on a panel or for summer festivals, is we kind of want to hear the piece when you play it, right? Like, even though you're playing alone, we want to hear the orchestra and kind of the vibe and the feel of the piece. So I'm hoping maybe we can get, and maybe someone said maybe they can't see your drums, so could you like point your camera down a little bit as we play? Yeah, that's great. That's great. So could you start back at the top of this, and what I want to get to kind of is to have more of a build, like building up this tension, starting at the beginning. So not starting too much, but really each time you have this figure of each time it's kind of a bit more. It's like, oh, we're going here, and then next level, next level, next level. So can you kind of try to think about that? Let's just play the first two lines here of that. Nice. Yeah, so I like that intensity a little bit better. Now let's just work on just the phrasing. So we got the hairpins going of the drags going up and down kind of. Yeah. So can we make are you playing it with your left hand or your right hand, the main note?
Right hand.
Right hand. Okay, so can you just play the right hand for me? And we need a bit more of a smoother up and down. So right now it's getting a little too, like, you wait a little too long to get to the peak, and we want it to kind of build up. So it's going to be, what is that, 4 up and 2 down? So give a little bit bigger crescendo, like make sure you support that line going up a little bit more. Can you try that? You can just do it without the Grace Notes ones.
All right.
Great. Yep. So we're just looking at this measure. I guess it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like that 9th measure with the drags. So right now, this is kind of. I'll try to play what you're playing. It's kind of like. Right. So I'm exaggerating a little bit, but what we want is more. So think about less of like an accent on that top note and kind of support it all the way through, so we get something more like. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So you can add the. Yeah, exactly. Now can you add the drag back in? Yeah, that's much better. Does that feel any different than how you're doing it?
Yeah, I felt like I had to lift a lot more for the accent.
Yeah, like the first time you were doing it?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you're kind of just helping yourself out and getting a little bit higher, and then just kind of naturally doing that. So I think that's much more effective, and I can kind of hear that musical phrase much more clearly, and hopefully you can too. So now let's carry on that idea. Can you just play... are you reading off the same snare drum excerpt collection book? Yeah, great. Yeah. So can you just start with that 3rd line now, that starts with the rest, and each time we need a little bit more on each of these. So we have like not too much, but I want to feel that kind of drive into cue. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So really kind of lead us into that. Nice. Yeah. So of course we don't want to go overboard, and I can't tell exactly on the Zoom, but that's exactly the right character that I think you want to have. Is in this one, it's all about driving the bus, right? Of pushing everything through, and then once you get to Q, playing in unison with the trumpet, making sure it's really just driving and articulate and everything. And I think it was much better on Q than the first time, because we want it to be very smooth, I guess, and consistent on all of these. And I found, I don't know, you're doing right hand lead, is that correct?
Yeah.
So I found if you can not think of playing down into the head, but almost feeling it just come off the head each time, so that way you can keep that relaxation. So it's kind of like almost like in timpani where you play and you kind of feel it come back towards you. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So you're feeling that kind of upstroke on all of those, so it's not too down. Can you just try that one more time at Q, and then we're gonna move on? Just try to feel your left hand, just kind of upstroke. No, don't worry about the down. Just kind of make sure it's releasing off the head. Nice. Yeah, so that I really like that. It's a little inconsistent because I know I just asked you to change something, but a lot of them in there I really liked. So does that make sense, kind of where we're going with that?
Yeah, it feels more relaxed, actually, letting the stick do the work.
Exactly, yeah. So any chance we can get on basically any instrument we play that you can make yourself more relaxed, I think that's huge, because once you get into the actual audition and everything, you know you're going to be a little tense, a little nervous, right? So anything like that where you can feel more relaxed, it's great. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. Let's jump. Can we jump to Kiji now? So I really liked, I thought all your grace notes were really nice and clear. I could hear all of them, which is great, because sometimes they're a little too crushed. I think maybe the one thing I want is a little more definition on the main note of the rhythm. So not getting too caught up on the grace notes, because we know you can play them and they're super clean. So could you try for me, starting it again, and just let, kind of what we were just talking about, let the grace notes, just kind of the sticks do the work, and just focus on keeping the main note, and just getting the main rhythm out without disrupting it with the grace notes. Awesome. That's great. So, great. I feel like we're hearing the rhythm more now. So now can we just play around, have a little fun with some of this phrasing? So I noticed that time on the second line you did something like phrasing to the fourth note. So it was almost like... Could you try actually, just for fun, doing it jump, 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 ba-da-dum, jump, jump, shada-dum, bum. So kind of leading away from, it's like bum, 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 ba-da-dum. So less, does that make sense? Less crescendo to four and more of kind of like a tenuto falling away from the third beat to the fourth. Yep. So now once you add it in, that's right. Can you try adding in the grace notes now?
Oh, yeah.
Yep. I like the third and fourth measure. Can we just try? I'll play one more time. So just a little, just think a little lighter and not so heavy on all of the notes. Just try to play a little more relaxed on the. So just a little more shape, not even a decrescendo, but just on the third and fourth beats of the first two measures there. Nice. Yeah. And now, just for fun here, can we try just like, so say this is the amount that the grace note has before the note. Can you just try to tighten it up a little bit so it's a little closer like each of the grace notes are a little bit closer instead of, it's a little more. So not a big change, but just kind of tighten it up a little bit.
Okay.
Nice. And Kenneth, when you play this, where are you feeling it in your wrist, fingers, arm, forearm, upper arm, back? Where are you feeling this one?
For the grace notes, fingers.
Okay.
And for all the main notes, I use some of my arm.
Okay. Good. Yeah, I think that's good. Can we try to do a little bit more activating, feeling it kind of in the top of your forearm, so it's a little less, even in the grace notes, I think, because I think it'll just help you be a little more relaxed and not worry too much about getting that up front, because I think it's causing like little tiny inconsistencies. So just try to throw it back a little bit and keep this elbow kind of nice and loose. I'll tell you what, did that feel any different, or how did that feel to you?
Yeah, that felt better actually.
Yeah, I think getting this unlocked, because I don't know, that to me was like, yeah, that was what we were looking for on that. So again, like, I feel like now twice what we talked about, anything that you can do to stay nice and loose, nice and relaxed, because it has a giant effect on your playing, right? Like what you just played, I feel like that was great. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Now quickly, let's jump over to the Capriccio. Could you just play the first whatever that is, 2 lines or of it?
Oh.
Nice. So, yeah, the first time when you played it, I felt like it was a little too. If we're gonna talk about, I know there aren't accents or anything on the phrasing, right, on the quarter notes, but making sure they were a little too accented, and I think they need to be a little more legato, which it was almost there this time. So you wanted to just kind of fill out the roll a little bit more on these. So not so. Right? Do you kind of hear the difference between when I'm playing a little more open like this? Between the buzzy. Again, I'm exaggerating. You're not doing it quite that much, but could you try that just once on the roll? It's just kind of opening it up. Again, keep this elbow nice and loose.
Yeah.
Nice. I love the first part. That's 100% better. Did that feel much different to you on top of it?
Yeah, yeah, much better with the legato. I just feel like the first time I did it was like more, I guess, I don't know, to me, more musical, I guess. Like I was having fun with it.
Oh, are you not having fun anymore?
No, I mean, I like it. I like it. I mean, with the music and everything, I just feel like I could just like really like have fun with it, I guess.
Yeah, no, and please don't let me not let you have fun. I just want the adjustment on the sound, like filling out the roll, but you should still do. I think there's still room for you to do more of the phrasing that you're doing. It's more on the middle part of the roll. But what you just played was excellent. So, but always, I love that. Just make sure you're still having fun with it, because that's the most important part. Quick. Let's just work on these triplets a little bit. Can you make sure that you keep feeling that bump, 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 bump? The kind of rhythmic motor is still going, because it's getting a little. It almost feels like a little unsure of where the time is. So, and I think what might help is how you pace these triplet notes, so make sure that it's always leading to the downbeat of the next one. So can you just try that? Make sure it's like it's. I'm not asking for like, but kind of on a small scale. Does that make sense? Like the first one's going to be the least, and then growing to the downbeat.
Okay. Do you want me to start the roll and the eighth note? Into those triplets?
You can just start. You can just start on that figure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, good. On the triplets, could you try to throw it back, feel it back, kind of in the back of your forearm, or almost in like your upper arm, just supporting the sound from there.
All right.
Yeah, it's just it's a little compressed, so it sounds a little. Could you just kind of balance it out a little bit? Just kind of feel nice and loose with it. Don't overthink it.
Oh. All right.
Yeah, it's getting there. Do you kind of hear how it's? I think you're waiting a little too long to start the triplet. Does that make sense?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Could you try really playing it like starting that triplet right on the beat? Yeah, good. I like the first one the best, and then it got crushed a little bit at the end. But does that kind of make sense? Maybe just check it with the metronome going. Again, I still want you to have fun with the phrasing and everything, but you just want to make sure that it's any like pushing, pulling that you're doing is still in time, so that they don't think that like whoever the listener is doesn't think that the time gets a little weird or anything. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and now just the Shostakovich here. And just think a little more. Let's play this. I think we just need a little character adjustment, more fire, more intensity. This is a wild ending to this movement. So really take us somewhere from the beginning to the end. You can play the whole thing again.
Oh.
Nice. Lots of great things and nice adjustments. I think the character is much better. Have you considered maybe on these rolls not playing them like have you messed with the bass of the roll at all? Like trying a slower start or?
Yeah, I think I was working on the triplets instead on the rolls, putting a triplets on there.
Yeah.
Maybe it will help out.
Yeah, I think
I'm getting too tense with the 16 notes.
Exactly, yeah. It's limiting a bit on like having that forward momentum feeling if you're kind of caught in like. So I think especially on like. Like it can be I find personally that like an odd number of strokes tends to work better as long as you know that you're going to end on your other hand. Because you can kind of fill it out. Do you remember when we were talking about which one was it? Like filling out the roll a bit on Capriccio?
Yeah.
Could you try to kind of emulate that same kind of sound on these rolls? Like maybe slightly slower? Because it might not even be like triplets. It could just be like a 7 instead of an 8. So you'll end on your other hand. But just that slight decrease in the roll speed I think will help fill it out a bit more. Could you try that, just the first 2 lines a little bit slower on the roll speed? Yeah.
Yeah,
How did that feel?
yeah, better. I'm still working out the triplet.
Yeah, yeah. It's all good. No worries. That's just something I would keep playing with because I feel like it's so fast and it kind of goes by each measure. So you don't really have to worry about. I think you could get away with playing. I mean that almost sounds more full to me than trying to get all of those. Play a little. I mean, what do you think? What would you choose between those two? Like the more relaxed one or the more intense?
Yeah, well, yeah, relax is always good.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's always better.
but still fun too, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Man, do you have any questions about these? I feel like we made some little tweaks with it, but a lot of really great things happening. Do you have any questions?
Uh, I mean, with the Capriccio,
Mm-hmm.
I think it does sound better with it like much more smoother.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I guess how would you phrase that on the second line at least?
Oh, on the second line. Is that the one where it has more? Oh yeah. So I would do kind of what you did. I think the phrasing you did was fine. Just thinking about instead of an accent on each quarter note, just think of it more of a tenuto, like a legato. So it's the same. So it's not going to be right, but it's still you're still putting a bit of emphasis. Does that make sense? So you just don't want it to be a harsh accent, like emphasis on it. But I still think that you should phrase how you're phrasing.
Okay. Yeah.
Does that answer your question? Sorry if it's not.
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Yeah, everything sounds great. Thank you so much for playing. Does anyone else, Greg or Rob, do you have anything else to add, or are we all good?
No, you covered it. Sounded great.
Cool. Thanks, Kenneth.
Thank you.
Great playing.
Wonderful job. Thank you so much for playing with us today. That was great. And thank you, Stephen, for coaching Kenneth through that. So for our next spot today, we have Rob Knopper of the MET Orchestra will coach Ethan Lee, a member of the Seattle Youth Symphony Orchestra, who will play Turkish March by Beethoven.
Good job, Ethan. Wow, that was awesome. That was so musical. You were making so many interesting phrases and shapes. I was enthralled. You know, when you were getting there towards the end, I was really hearing the nuances of, you know, you building up the phrase, leading up to certain arrival points, and then relaxing away to other things. And yeah, really beautiful playing. Um, how does it feel? How did it feel? Did you feel like that was a good performance for you?
It wasn't my best, but it wasn't my worst either. It was pretty good.
Okay. What is hard about this piece for you?
Um, probably like from switching from the roll, like the switch, like switch to the
I see. So like you're playing a roll 1 second, and then the next second you're playing single notes. Um, I see. I see. What makes that hard?
When I switch, I sometimes hit other notes, so it sometimes messes it up.
Ah, okay. I see. Um, Interesting. Okay. Anything else? Do you feel like you struggle with anything else about this piece?
Not really.
Okay. By the way, in case Jeannie is still here, Jeannie is one of the attendees who wanted us to name the instruments. This one is a marimba. Ethan is nailing this piece on the marimba. So yeah, in case you were wondering. Cool. Well, let's see. Yeah, we can definitely work on that technical thing going on. There was a couple other things I wanted to just mention as you are working on this. Let's talk about that one. So, so I guess that happens in the first measure, right? The very first measure. So, can you play that again and let us just watch, maybe play the first two measures and let us just watch what you're doing. Nice, nice. Okay. It's looking really good. I mean, technically, it's not like you have some kind of extra motions that I would ask you to take away from your playing. I think from my perspective, what's maybe going on is you are so dedicated to showing the beauty of the role that it just goes a little too long. And you can give yourself permission to just stop rolling a little bit earlier. Just play a shorter roll. I mean, it's still going to resonate, but you can just literally stop your rolling slightly earlier so you can have more time to move your hands. Yeah, like I'm hearing like maybe 6 strokes. Like, why don't you try 4? Just fewer strokes. Yeah, you fixed it. That's perfect. Does that feel easier?
Yes.
And what's that?
Much easier.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. Sometimes if you're playing towards the top of the marimba, it's going to resonate less. So you have to make sure to play like a longer roll. But in this case, your marimba sounds beautiful and it's really singing in the space. So even if you stop early, it still sounds like a long note. It still sounds like it's still a roll. So I hope that, that solves your problem. Cool. Speaking of rolls, I wanted to just focus on rolls a little bit because I wonder if you're bringing in a lot of interesting shapes to your playing, and you're showing phrasing, meaning you're showing, even sometimes when it's not written, you're showing rising emotion, and then you're showing relaxing emotion, so that it can feel like a journey. You're expressing that, you're showing that really well through almost everything. Sometimes the rolls can sound like you can make the rolls, you can shape the rolls a little bit more so that they are also showing the shape of the phrase. So like, for instance, the last, the roll that's in measure 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Those of you who are not seeing the music, I'm just going to quickly share this screen here so you guys can see. So this is what he was just playing. And I was saying, what can we do with this roll in the 4th bar? How can we shape it? So let's hear you play it, Ethan. Let's hear you play. And I just want to see what you're already doing. And then we can think about how we can shape that to express the phrase.
So I start from the beginning?
Yeah, just start from the beginning and maybe go through the end of the first line. Yeah. So let's see, how are you thinking of that roll? How do you, how do you hear that roll? Should it be flat? Should it be fading out? Should it be growing?
Probably should be growing from because it's from PP to P.
Yes. Yes. I love that. It's an interesting one. It's kind of, um, I I agree with that sentiment, and I want to hear it. I want to hear if it sounds natural when you do it. Can you try that, doing what you just said? Can you just play only measure 4 and measure 5? What I'm hearing, so you mentioned you think that roll should grow, but actually I'm hearing that roll fade away. Sometimes you really need to exaggerate something and make it sound more than you think it needs to be in order for the listener to hear it. Can you try really growing? Make sure that roll really grows to, yeah. Can you try it one more time? And grow and then arrive at measure 5. Yeah, I like that. I like that because what you're doing is, you know, you're showing this 4-bar phrase, the first 4 bars. You're bringing us through this journey. And if it just fades out and pauses, then what happens is it like you're basically popping the balloon. We lose the momentum. And if you plan to grow into measure 5, then it helps the listener. Um, it helps their emotion lead forward and say, oh, there's something else exciting coming up. It wasn't just 4 bars and then the piece is over. There's a second phrase. So yeah, I really liked what you were doing. Can you start it now again from measure 4 and continue on through the second line? Okay, so I want to bring your attention to one thing that's going on, which is the time. So the time or the tempo is slightly changing from measure, and let me just share my screen so you guys are seeing what's going on here. The tempo is slightly changing from measure 6 to measure 7. So, you know, in measure 6, since it's all quarter notes, you're training the audience to expect a certain tempo. Bum, 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 bum. And so as the audience, we have that tempo beating inside of our heads and our bodies when we're listening. So we expect you to stay in the same tempo in measure 7. So I want to make sure that you're not slowing down in measure 7. Make sure that you're feeling the underlying tempo. You know, make sure that you can feel the quarter notes. So if measure 6 is bum, bum, I'm sorry, is that measure 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. Measure 6, if measure 6 is bum, 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 then measure 7 has got to be dun, 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 just as fast as measure 6 was. Would you mind trying to play us measure 6 and 7 together? Yeah, I want to try an exercise that can help you have better time, because there's a lot going on right now. You're playing rolls, you're switching between quarter notes and eighth notes. And so I sometimes when there's a problem or when I'm trying to fix something, I like to simplify it so that I can really just focus on the problem. Um, so what I would like to ask you to do, if you don't mind, is make this as simple as you can. Take out the rolls, so no rolls. you don't even have to play both notes, you know, of these double stops if you don't want to. And in measure 7, can you just play the notes that land on the quarter notes? So D, B, G. So it'll sound like bum, 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 just like that. Do you mind trying to play that? Yeah, try it one more time, but that's on the right track. One more time. Yeah, let me just quickly try to demonstrate here. Can you hear me if I talk like this? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, okay. Can you hear when I'm playing it? Listen again and see if you can just feel how exactly those quarter notes are spaced apart from each other. It's like if you're clapping along, bum, 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 bum. There's no difference between how long it takes to get from one note to the next. It's not changing tempo at all. Can you try that? Yeah. So what I like is your eighth notes, those are now in time. But the quarter notes before it are a little bit fast now. So make sure you're playing very steadily, as steady as you possibly can. Great. Okay. That's excellent. All right. So now, because you fixed it, now we can take one step back to bringing in some of the more complex stuff. So let's start with this. Don't add the rolls in yet, but just add the eighth notes in. So what you were playing is, and now the new version should be, yeah, that was in time. Excellent. Okay, we only have one step left, which is to add the rolls back in. Okay, this sometimes happens. Sometimes when you add too much complexity back in, you forget the fix that you made. So we're going to take one step back and remind ourselves of how it goes with excellent time. So play it again without the rolls, but with the eighth notes. Yes, and now try the same exact time and feel, but with the rolls. Try it again. Just try one more time. Try to imitate me. Yeah, that's good. That's good. So your goal is, you know, going forward to try to play the rolls, but don't let it affect the time. Don't let the rolls make your tempo slower. So try bringing in the rolls and keeping the same tempo. Okay, you know what? This is going to be a project that you'll keep working on, but we need to move on from these measures. So you made some excellent progress in terms of getting those notes to be in time without the rolls. And yeah, why don't you start now from line 2, right at the next phrase, line 2, measure 4. just so you guys can see it here. Very nice. Okay. One thing I would love for you to be able to do, if you can try this, is you see this this phrase that starts here on in measure 9. It's the one that starts with the it's the A minor. So it starts at mezzo forte, and there's a crescendo, slow crescendo, and it lands at forte. Now, this is the first time that you're playing forte in the piece. And this should be a big arrival. This is a big moment. I mean, all you've done before this is pianissimo and piano. So we don't know, we the listeners, we don't know that you are about to play forte. This is something that you should make us feel really excited about when you're getting to forte. So I wonder if you can try to build up the drama of bringing the listener's emotional level up to forte, which would mean just bringing in more crescendo and making a bigger deal out of leading up to and arriving in that measure, measure 13 with the forte. Yes, that was awesome. I really felt like, wow, we've arrived. We're like hiking up the mountain and we've arrived at the summit, or like we're going up the roller coaster and we finally reached the top of the mountain. Yeah, that was great. You know, by the way, this kind of phrasing and emotion, playing with the listener's emotion, this is the most important thing that you're doing. This is more important than the time. This is more important than the precision or hitting the right notes. This is the true journey that you're bringing the listener through. So that was great. Do you want to try it one more time and keep going? Yeah, very nice. Can I stop you? Sorry to interrupt. It was great. I really loved the crescendo leading up to the fortissimo in the second to last line. I'm just going to share my screen real quick. I really loved this crescendo that you helped us experience the journey leading up to the fortissimo. Now, I want to just quickly talk about the previous two phrases. So this phrase, which is the forte with accents, and there's no dynamic change. There's no crescendo or anything. And then this next phrase, which is a 3-bar forte with no accents, and there's legato slurs. So, okay. You don't just have to wait until there's a written crescendo to bring some shape into the music. So when there is a crescendo, you can show it really exaggeratedly. You can show a huge crescendo, but even when there's not a crescendo, the listener might feel like they want some shape. They still want to grow their emotion. You know, you still want to help the listener's emotion grow leading towards the next phrase. So when you're looking at these two phrases, um, even though there's no written crescendo, I would still love to hear some shape. And honestly, I try to never ever play a phrase without shape. I never want to play a flat phrase. So how do I play a shape with when there's no crescendo written? Do you have an idea? How do you do that? Yeah, that was good. What did you do?
I just toned down the F just by a little bit and just crescendo just a little bit.
Just crescendo just a little bit. Right. How did you decide how much crescendo to do?
Not enough for like when you have a written crescendo, but not small enough so that people can't hear it.
Yes, precisely. That's very smart. That was exactly what I was going to say. Because when you're performing this, some people will be looking at the music and they'll be taking notes. Did you follow the dynamics? Did you follow all the details that are written? And if you get loud enough that it actually sounds like a written crescendo, the listener might say, that is going too far away from the music. But some other people listening, they don't care about what's written in the music. They just want to hear emotion. They just want to hear shape and the journey of the piece. So it's a careful balance, but I think you're exactly right. It's like you should play enough. You should play as much as you can to show as much phrase as you can without it sounding like a written crescendo. And that also means that your written crescendos have to be even more exaggerated so that the listener says, oh, there's a difference. There's a difference between a shape that he's just bringing through the music and then a shape when it's a written indication. Yeah, so excellent answer. I love that. Okay, let's start again from that first forte, or that forte where you just started. So line 5, measure 5, and you can just play all the way to the end. And I would love to hear all of those shapes. All right. Wow, that was great. That was awesome. And one thing that you could try doing if you were feeling really adventurous is you could try doing just a little bit of time manipulation at the end. Just slow down just a little bit to really help us feel like this is the end. We've really arrived and this is it. Da, 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 dum, bum, bum, just to help it have a little bit more weight. The only reason I'm asking you to do that is if it's right in time, it might sound like, oh, there's another section coming up next. But since this is the end, you want to show us, nope, that's it. This is the end. Yeah, you want to try it. Just start at, let's see, last line, measure 3. That whole phrase. Excellent. All right, great. Yeah, congratulations, Ethan. I just wanted to open up the floor. I'm getting the message from Katie. I wanted to open up the floor to see if Greg or Stephen might have any expert advice for you on this.
Nothing to add. Just great job, Ethan.
Yeah, very exciting. And yeah, you should be really proud of your performance. So congratulations.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Wonderful job, Ethan. Thank you so much for playing for us today. So for our third spot, we have Greg Zuber of the MET Orchestra with Coach Juani Pack, a student at Wild Lake High School in Columbia, Maryland, who will play the Courante from Suite Number 1 by J.S. Bach.
Great job. Bravo. Really nice. So mostly what I have to say to you really will have more to do with just complimenting what you're doing so well and so nicely rather than any real corrections, and maybe a little bit just about performing and the attitude in the middle, in the midst of what you're doing here. Um, I think what you're doing so nicely is bringing a lot of contrast, a lot of phrasing, a lot of shading of the gestures. Um, maybe you could think more in terms of foreground and background. And so like one opportunity for that is almost to divide it up as if there's two voices, two participants, right? So for the obvious way to do that to me is separating out sort of the bass line, right? So it's going to start just with those first two notes, bum bum, and then almost like a little aside, bum bum, da 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 dum, bum da da dum, bum bum bum, just something like that. Maybe there can be well. So let's start by just trying that. Try and bring that out with clarity, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Excellent. Yeah, exactly right. And so through Katie, we had a little, we sort of had a little discussion about how to do the repeats and
Right.
whether to do the repeats. And so I have some sort of various ideas about that. You know, back in Bach's day when there was no recorded music at all, no CDs, DVDs, radio, anything at all. The only way you could hear music was live for somebody to play it. So, and this occurrence of repeats of many verses of things. The further back you go, the more that's really prevalent. And in opera, we encounter this all the time, that someone will sing an aria and there's many, many verses. And, if you think about it, the only way, if someone was going to hear a piece of music only one time in their life, the only way to really have a chance to absorb it was to get to hear it, more than one time. And so we're approaching this from a kind of different vantage point, actually, because we do have the opportunity with recordings and everything related to that to really hear music a lot, as often as we want. So I think that there's more of an onus on the performer to bring variety to it. So that's maybe just the first thing. And so with the repeats, even though you did approach them somewhat differently, I would probably encourage you to be more dramatic in how you try and differentiate the first time from the second time. And some of that, should be heartfelt about your sense of the expression of what the music is. But some of it really, from my point of view, not in a silly way, but can be almost arbitrary, meaning, well, I'm doing this the first time, so I'm going to be sure and not do that the second time.
Yeah.
The contrast is very clear. I wonder, there's an idea about expression sort of as suggested from the harmony, from dissonance written into the music that I really learned actually from one of my wife's flute teachers, Alex Murray, who was principal flute in the London Symphony for many, many years, but also a Baroque music expert. And he talked about the driving force of the music really being in the dissonance and in the dissonant harmonies rather than in the consonants. And also at a sort of a class that Leonard Bernstein was leading that I got to attend, he was also talking about a similar idea about not landing heavily on a downbeat resolution unless it's really the end of the piece, that everything all the activity and motion and drive really have to come in the other parts of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if you can start again and just be trusting your ear that any place it's less consonant harmonic material you're playing, to sort of look for a way to stress, emphasize, lean on those notes, and don't worry about a strong ending really until the very end of the whole piece.
Okay. So
give us the first time through the first half, just with that idea.
okay.
Take a comfortable tempo.
Yeah.
Good, very nice. Can you start at the last, what for me is the last line of that? I guess, well, I'll give you a measure number. It's measure 14.
Okay.
Let's see, I can actually, let's see if I can do this. Oh, it's too much information, but there's a Bach. I'm talking about this measure here where
Okay.
little D's,
Mm-hmm.
and let the last 16th of each group really drive the inflection of the phrase. And
Okay.
then as you head into the D, let it taper to the D rather than end heavy on the D. And then just like a sort of brief comment that you'll want to make a small correction, that each time you hit the last measure and then go back for a repeat or go on, make sure you give it the full 3/4 value of time, rather than tend just to be very excited about getting on with it and into the next phrase.
Okay.
good. Do that one more time and use that scale upwards to really arrive at the G scale 3 measures before the end of the section.
Okay.
Great. And then in the penultimate measure of that, the measure before the D, for me, I would want to really bring out the 16th notes through the C sharp, again, like leaning on the dominant and backing off for the tonic. Da 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 dum bum bum. Something,
Okay.
if you can create that effect.
Yeah. Like
Right. That, so for me, that leaves the listener, convinced that there's more coming and ready to see what's happening next. I wouldn't mind working with you a little bit just on a version 1 versus a version 2.
Okay.
And so for right now, if it's not too much to ask, to sort of put you on the spot in the moment, can you play the first half of it and then do the repeat, and as much as you can, whatever you do in the first half, do the opposite in the repeat. This literally, it's kind of an expression mirror image.
Yeah. Okay.
Good. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to do on the fly like that. I mean, I want to sort of lead you through a number of ideas that are all sort of options for approaching this. So I mean, of course, a very common approach to playing the repeats is to ornament, embellish, actually, sort of use this as more of a template to bring your own personality and even sort of creativity to it rather than just playing literally.
Yeah.
And so, you can actually like add little turns and, embellishment notes in this. For instance, dum 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 bum bum, something like that. And when I bring that to the interpretation, I usually take a gesture like that and I try and put it in sort of appropriately, but throughout the whole movement, so that it's
Yeah.
kind of unifying device as well as a way to vary it and make it my own. So, something like dun dun dum bum bum dun 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 dum dum bum bum dun dun dum bum 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 dun 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 dum bum bum, which it'd be easier if I had it written out for you but so I'm going to play the G and then a very quick sort of F sharp G, F sharp G to the downbeat. Dum, dum, dum. It's almost like a very fast triplet.
Yeah.
So worried about it being, in time as a triplet. And then the same idea in the second measure, The second measure, beat 3, that the C natural would be again a sort of triplet C D C E, is if that makes
Yeah.
on the fly. And just throughout the piece for similar moments, I'm going to sort of bring that gesture through it more consistently. So that's
Mhm.
just another idea about sort of organizing the whole piece. Becomes a kind of complicated discussion, and maybe complicated with Bach also in terms of ornamentation to do, because Bach is known for sort of being the culminating person of the Baroque period, and part of what he was culminating, what made him a culminating figure, is that he wrote a lot of what was considered an ornamentation in his day right into the pieces compared to earlier composers.
Hmm.
So, you want to be thoughtful about what you're doing, that it reflects the original, unless you're really choosing to present it as a kind of departure of your own.
Mhm.
I like the idea of bringing your individuality to it so much as you can develop that and understand it relative to the piece. Um, Contrary to what I suggested earlier, you can also play this in a much more sort of melodically horizontal, melodic fashion, where you
Hmm.
don't separate the D and G right after those first two notes, but really just carry through, that as part of the whole gesture. And so that's another way to vary from half to half.
Hmm.
The one way you might really have it as a kind of bass accompaniment interjection, dum dum bum bum da 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 da, and then the next time might be dum 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 da 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 da. That is
Hmm.
right with the line. Let's try and differentiate a first versus a second version more than you're doing right now. Let's say that the first version is going to be first time through the first half is going to be quite machismo, quite bravado, till maybe the very end that there's a little tapering. And
Mhm.
time you might think of it as almost a more feminine kind of expression. So something more gentle, still lots of expression, um, within the cells. And then one other idea that I want you to think about as you're doing it, to me, one thing that's really important so often in interpreting Bach's music is identifying sort of what I think of as the words within the phrasing. So that's often a gesture of only a few notes. So let's see, to share this again. So like I'm looking at measure 5. For me, each of
Mhm.
the sort of just the first 3 notes here, and then the 3 notes at the end, and then again 3 notes on at beat 1, 3 notes at beat 2, and then almost syncopated 3 notes there, and then back to on the beat. If you can, through shadings of articulation and inflection and dynamic, if you can bring those out, that ends up being a fantastically varied way to play through the line that you're playing, with a huge amount of expression on a very subtle level.
Yeah.
And often the way, I'm very leery. This was written for cello, obviously, and I'm always very leery about trying to imitate the cello, because our instrument doesn't really have enough of the same characteristics about how we produce each note to imitate that very well. So I'm looking for a way that fits our instrument, maybe better than just imitating the cello. We don't have the length, the sustain. But one thing that we can do, if we're paying attention to it, we can control and very, very in a controlled way the articulation that we play in notes with. And that has a lot mostly to do with speed of stroke, with
Hmm.
how you engage the core in each stroke or how little you engage the core. And you can vary that from note to note, and should be varying that in a purposeful way from note to note, so that, it, in a way, it's an interesting idea that through the performance of the Bach movement, that maybe you try that no two adjacent notes have exactly the same color, meaning articulation especially, and not exactly the same dynamic. That there's always inflection from one note to note, the next note, but in a very purposeful way. You know, that the purposeful way is the very definition of the expression you're bringing to it.
Yeah.
So give us a version, you know, where you're thinking about the articulation within the words, and that in general, it's more sort of strong and forceful the first time through, and more lyrical and gentle the second time through.
Okay.
Great, very nice. Now, you know, maybe that's a little too sort of black and white in contrast. And, you know, so the way to bring probably more subtlety and variety, interest to that, but utilizing that idea is within the section to bring that kind of contrast, to be thinking about foreground, background that we talked about before, but
Hmm.
also, you know, sort of lyricism versus, you know, a more kind of heroic marcato idea. Um, so maybe the last thing, you know, I'll ask with this first half is, can you try and give us a version that really decidedly, purposefully, you know, maybe starts out with a more masculine, and then really goes for a kind of gentle femininity almost through the middle section, and then builds back to a more heroic ending.
Okay.
Great. Yeah, really good. You know, so I think that going forward with this, you know, it's just, you know, continually looking for a more sort of sophisticated um, interpretation, more variety within the amount of music and over the repeats. I don't know if I can find it quickly. There's a really great book on Baroque performance class practice that I've turned to, and that I ask my students to use. I'm going to just try and I think I can pull it up quickly for you. All right, there, and give me one more second. Is this book here, which is by Robert Donington. It's called Baroque Music Style and Performance, a Handbook. And it's partly it's called a handbook because he has a sort of 800-page version of this book, which is I have the book, but it's like a little bit meaty for me to have a practical value, um, unless you really want to become a Baroque specialist. This book is about 250 pages, including the appendix, so it's very manageable. And basically, what he did with his research is he collected letters, articles, documents, whatever kind of textbook tracts he could, all from the Baroque period. So, many of them in German, French, Italian. And he translated them into English, and then he divided everything they said up by topic. So anything anyone said about how to play a courant would be in one place. And then rather than tell you how he thinks you should play it, he just offers all the quotations of how people in the Baroque period um, suggest that is the right way to play it. And part of what's really, for me, quite glorious as well as reassuring and helpful is that I had a lot of teachers that went to great pains to tell me this is exactly how this should be played. When you're playing Bach or when you're playing Baroque music, which I always found a little bit off-putting since we were starting with playing it on marimba anyway, which is not an instrument that really existed in that period in anything like it does now, if at all. Um, and the book really confirms like this really wide, um, range of points of view about how to approach many of the topics that are of concern to us. Um, and then I guess the last thing that I would share with you, if you just bear with me, again, just about resources. I think I can also pull this up quickly. Yes. Okay. Hopefully you can see that well enough. This is George Philippe Telemann. It's a sonata in G major that he wrote, and um, it's a little blurry, unfortunately, but basically the top line, he wrote this to use as a teaching vehicle. So, he's for us a famous composer, but, in his day, he was a flute player and I think, and a, as well as a composer and a teacher. And he wrote this to instruct his students on how they might approach interpreting the music of their day. And so the top line is what he said, this is what I would write for the piece. This is, if you're just publishing a piece, the top line would be the melody. The third line is what the accompanist would get. So they just get a bass line and figured bass. The bottom two is an interpretation of the figured bass. So it's not the only way to do the figured bass, it's just how it might go. And what's really of interest to me is this second line with all of these, so many more notes than the top line. He's saying like, this is what he might play if someone gave him the top line as a piece to perform. And he's not talking about the second time through, I would play it that way. He's saying like, if you gave me this top line to play, I would, there are a lot of ways to approach it, but one way might be to play it as the second line. And there are places where the second line just has only the scarcest resemblance to the top line. And, which really sort of cemented for me that for much of the Baroque period, the instrumental musicians were much more like jazz musicians interpreting a standard tune that, they bring their own personality and preferences to how to perform the tune, that's as important as keeping the tune, sort of recognizable and faithful to the original. And so, I'm really attracted to this idea of, while I would never compare myself to Coltrane in anything but the silliest way, but still, like, I would like to my approach to playing Bach to be more like, Coltrane's approach to playing Round Midnight, which is going to be really different than, Sonny Stitt's approach to playing Round Midnight. That I like the idea that we can give ourselves the latitude and the permission and even the encouragement to personalize these things and not feel like we're just in a box trying to hopefully that's not what it takes to please your teacher, or even, and I'm including auditions. I mean, I felt, um, I was a much less mature player, is obvious, when I was, taking auditions, now 30 plus years ago. And I didn't always have the sort of comfort zone to approach something like this. And every once in a while, I would hear either in the warm-up room or through a wall, somebody that really did bring a lot more ornamentation to, some sort of Bach or Handel piece that they were playing in the audition. And I always thought, wow, that really sounds like they're invested in it, like they're really playing it. So I would encourage you not to feel so constrained and conservative, even for those kind of things where you're sort of worried about judgment. I think that most people at this point welcome, appropriate and, and insertions of creativity into your interpretation. You have any questions about it? I think you did, really nice job.
Yeah, that was all really great, and I think that answered a lot of my questions of like what could I do. So that was really good. Thank you, Mr. Super.
My pleasure. And if either Rob or Stephen want to chime in and contradict me about everything, now's the chance. Which I also
Nothing from me. Sounds great.
Yeah, great job. Everything sounds great. And
Thank you.
Greg, spot on. Great job.
thank you very much, Wani. I really appreciate your playing.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for playing for us today. That was fantastic and a wonderful coaching on, especially on Baroque ornamentation for all of us. So we are at the close of our masterclass today. Thank you so much for everyone for tuning in, participating in this masterclass, and especially to Stephen White, Rob Knopper, and Gregory Zuber for the inspiring coaching today. If you do have questions for any of them or any of the performers, please enter them in the chat now. While we are waiting for questions to come in, or if we already have them, I would actually like to touch base. Now, I got to talk to email back and forth quickly with Greg and Rob and Stephen, all on their ideas for practice tips. So they had some fantastic things that I would actually ask if they could share here.
We were talking with Ethan about, we were doing that exercise where we kind of simplified everything back and then tried to take these baby steps towards something harder and harder. And that's kind of like, for me, I don't know about, you guys, Greg and Stephen, I'd be curious to hear if you guys have this experience too, but that kind of process has been really useful for me in basically almost all of my technical gains over the years. There's always like a threshold that, or like the edge of my technique where it's like I can't go past that. And if I'm constantly trying to do something way too hard, I'm still not really making the gains. So my goal during the practice session is to simplify something until I find what I can do, what is already within my ability, and then I take baby steps towards the edge of my ability until I'm at that kind of struggle moment, and I kind of leapfrog back and forth between what I can do and what I can't do. So with Ethan, we worked on it with time, and it's something that I might work on with double strokes in terms of speed or certain anything really, like technical passages. I've always worked that way. And then I watched this video that Don Green and Annie Bosler made about practicing and deliberate practice like a few years ago. And somewhere in the video, it just phrased it perfectly. And I realized that really expressed exactly how I've made a lot of my gains, which is, they said, effective practice is consistent, intensely focused, and targets content or weaknesses that lie at the edge of one's current abilities. So that is something that really has been incredibly useful to me. And whenever I'm having a problem, I try to remember that and shape my practice around that kind of concept.
That's really helpful. So I think for a lot of us, the takeaway there is we want to, if we're practicing and we're not just practicing the easy stuff, we tackle, right away, okay, what's the hardest thing that I can do? And instead of really thinking about it and backtracking to what can I do right now and how do I go step by step to get there? So I think that's what that missing segment that really helps, again, push skill without completely overwhelming us and making us go off and do something else because practicing is too hard at this moment in time. Wonderful. So, Greg, you had a practice tip on, you had a dirty little secret about practicing. Do you remember what that was?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm in my own experience. I mean, the problem with practicing is that it works, right? But it means you have to do it. So, um, there's a kind of corollary experience. My wife years ago, she got real interested in drawing, which is something she had never really done. And she bought this book called Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain, and it had this whole philosophy about your creative side versus your analytical side, and it had all these exercises. And she was going through them. She was doing really nice drawings, actually. I mean, that seemed to be working. And we have artists in the family and a bunch of visual artist friends. And we were out to dinner with some friends, and she started describing her experience working on drawing. And the thing that struck me from the conversation really was they said, well, well, that's all great. And it sounds like you're doing great stuff. They said, anything that gets you to sit down and draw for 30 minutes a day is going to improve your drawing. And, so there's a kind of reinforcement of this idea, you have to really do it. You're not going to improve by inconsistent practice, whether it's day to day or how you're approaching it. I mean, and I agree with everything Rob said. I mean, I think it's so critical to break things down into their components, and that can be, depending on the topic, that can mean different things. It can have to do with the tempo you're playing it. If you're much slower than it goes, it can have to do with playing just the right hand of some piece or part that you're playing. It can be dealing with the transition from from slow tempo practicing to the performance tempo, and kind of chunking things, and to sort of bridge that gap. So whether it's just playing one gesture at a time at tempo until you've sort of internalized all that. There's a lot of ways to structurally break things down, but just to always be looking for, how is this put together? What is there the thing to latch onto? That's going to solidify this for me.
So we actually have to practice to get better. That's what you're saying.
Most of us, that seems to be.
So that's the secret all this time. I was wondering. Stephen, you go ahead, Greg.
I'm a big fan of the Matrix movies, and I'm so jealous of the fact that they can just plug a cable into the guy's head, and I can do jujitsu. Like, I had that at my disposal, but so far I don't.
Right. One day we'll be able to download those abilities and it'll be great, or it'll be really depressing. Either way. So, Stephen, you had also some ideas on practicing, especially about the music that you like and the importance of accessory instruments.
Yeah, I mean, that's I'd say even more than technical things. What I think about a lot is just playing any instrument that we have to play with a beautiful sound, and I feel like the only way to get to that point on instruments that maybe we don't from a young age practice. Like I remember growing up, it was always a lot of marimba, a lot of snare drum, but not a lot of time spent on cymbals, not a lot of time on triangle, tambourine, and so. I mean, that's the reality of it, is once you get a big job, the instruments that you play, the instruments that I end up playing the most of are bass drum and cymbals and triangle, more, and tambourine. I feel like all of our parts, especially in opera, it's all that. So I just think those instruments are so important for students to just spend time. And I think I wrote in there just one trick that I found when I was in school is to just have the instrument set out during a practice session. So if you have a pair of cymbals by like blocking the door, then every time that you need to leave to go to change practice rooms or go to the bathroom or anything, then you pick them up and you play a few cymbal crashes. And even just by doing that and adding that to your day, I feel like you're gradually going to get more comfortable and be able to make good sounds. So
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you guys so much again for doing this. We really appreciate it. And thank you to our performers today who all did a great job. If you guys do have any more last words of advice, or even questions from our performers who didn't get a chance to ask, this is your last chance. So, and Greg and Rob, Stephen, any last words of advice for everybody here today?
Second, what Steven said, if you're taking an audition to win a job and you play the best snare drum of the day and the best xylophone of the day, but then your cymbal playing and tambourine playing are inadequate, you're not going to get the job. So it's all important.
Just really proud of you guys for having the courage to, work hard during this weird period of time and come play for us. I really appreciated your guys' work, all three of you performers. I'm not that courageous. I'm not going to perform for my colleagues here. So yeah, congratulations.
Thank you guys, everybody. Have a great week and take care of yourselves.